I cannot believe I read 20 books in January. Hello friends, my name is Jess and welcome back to my channel, Books Past Bedtime. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books I read in January. January was a super great reading month for me. It was like the best reading month I've had since 2020. 2021 was not it for me, but I'm back on the grind. I'm all about that hustle culture. Just kidding. But I did read a lot of books in January. I also have a lot of fun reading stats and I'm so excited. I've been tracking so many things, all the things. So first I'll just give you like a little overall rundown. So as I mentioned, I did read 20 total books and that came to a total of 6,207 pages. I also listened to just barely over 66 hours of audiobooks. My average rating for the month was 3.95. I also purchased 14 books this month. Some of those were pre-orders through the Barnes & Noble pre-order sale, so I felt like that's like proactively buying things for the rest of the year. Hopefully this won't be as high like in upcoming months is what I'm trying to say. But I did purchase quite a few books in January. And then I checked out 3 books from the library. I read all 3 of those. Those were through Libby. They were just audiobooks. I didn't reread anything and I read 2 books that could be considered own voices. I'm not really tracking this super well because it's hard to know if a book is own voices or not. I feel like we've kind of in the general reading discourse moved away from using own voices, and I have 2, but I just if I know something is, I will mark it as that, so that's why that's in there. All right, in terms of genre, I feel like so many of the books that I read this month were like a mix between 2 things, so this is the best I could do, but I did read 2 contemporary books this month, 3 fantasy books, 1 mystery, 11 romance, and 3 thrillers. Yes, I did go on a Kindle Unlimited binge this month, and we will get to that later when I talk about the specific books I read, but lots of romance this month. In terms of format, you can really see Kindle Unlimited's influence because I read 5 physical books, 10 ebooks, and 5 audiobooks. In terms of audience, I'm sure some of these should be categorized as new adult, but I really don't understand the difference between new adult and adult. I guess it's just like characters in college. Is that what it is? I don't know. I just, keeping it simple, read 17 adult books and 3 YA books. In terms of author identity, I read 1 book by a genderqueer author, 1 book by a male author, 17 books by female authors, and 1 book by an author that uses they them pronouns. Author status, I actually read 3 debut novels, 10 books are by authors I had read before, and 7 books were by authors that were new to me. Looking at my rating breakdown, I had 6 5-star reads this month, which was pretty good. I had 2 that I rated 4.5 stars, 5 that I rated 4 stars, 2 that I rated 3.5 stars, 3 that I rated 3 stars, and 2 books that I rated 2 stars. Also, if you follow me over on Instagram, you know that I do like to track the number of pages I read per day. So I do that in my bullet journal and with this spreadsheet. So I do have this fun little calendar that shows you on what days that I read and what days that I didn't. So breaking down the key, the days that are green are days that I just read physically or like by ebook, like with my eyes. And then the days that are blue, I only listened to an audiobook I didn't read physically. The days that are purple, I did both. This is kind of not totally accurate because sometimes I think I counted if I was listening to an audiobook and physically reading together. I do that a lot. I think those days are green for just physical reading because I counted the pages instead of the hours of the audiobook because it's easier to do the math. And then at the bottom you can kind of see like the days that like a little graph of the days that I read and the days that I didn't. Obviously I read more days than I didn't, but there were some days that I didn't read at all. But my average page count per day was 145 pages, which is pretty good. Average hours listening per day is 1.8. These are all like regular speed, whereas I actually listen in 2 times speed, so this would be like an hour a day of an audiobook. And my average time spent reading was 2.73. This is guesstimated. I don't actually time how long I take to read, but I just kind of like try and remember each day how long I read, so it's just an approximation, but it's a fun thing to think about. I also this year am trying to keep track of how many books that I own that I'm reading. So I did go through and write out all the books that I own. This is both physical and audiobooks, things that I've purchased or that have been gifted to me. I don't count ebooks because I don't really buy ebooks anyway, but most of them are from NetGalley or Kindle Unlimited, so I just don't even worry about my ebook library. I do have a physical book problem, as you can see back there. I just love the sounds of the city. It's just my favorite thing. Incredible. Yes. Music to my ears. All right, So now that that fun is over, I started 2022 with 141 unread books, which is awesome. It's just great. The number is way too high for me, so we're gonna try and get that down. But I didn't actually chip away at that goal in January because I did read 7 books that I own physically, but I also acquired 7 books. So this number stayed the exact same in January, which was just awesome. It's just great. And you may be wondering how I am only counting 7 books when I actually acquired 14 that I said earlier, and I'm just like not counting the pre-orders. Those aren't counted, only the ones that I like have in my possession right now are being counted. I also have Storygraph this year, which is fun. So if you want to follow me or be my friend or whatever over there, I will have that linked in the description. I think I have it linked already, but you know what I mean. So there's a couple charts that they have, which are fun. So this one is my mood chart of moods of books that I read in January. It looks like most of my books are emotional, lighthearted, and adventurous. What that means, I'm not sure. And then as for pace of my books, looks like about 50% was medium paced, 39% was fast paced, 11% was slow paced. And then for page number, I read 1 book, I think, that was over 500 pages. Most of my books were between 300 and 499 pages, and then the rest of them were under 300. I'm pretty sure those were all the Kindle Unlimited books. And then I don't really like the other ones. Here's another breakdown of my star ratings. It's the same average rating of 3.96, like give or take a little bit. But I did give some books like 2.75 and 3.75 and 4.25 ratings. I guess I just felt some books deserved a little bit of a different rating on Storygraph. I don't know. Yes, so that was all my reading stats. And now we can just go ahead and talk about all of the books that I read in January. So when I've done these videos in the past, I've kind of like ranked the books. I don't feel like doing that. So I'm just going to go in the order of how I read them, and that's just what's going to happen. So the first book I finished in 2022 was Frat Wars, King of Thieves by Saxon James. And to be honest, this was a great book to start my year with. I gave it 4.5 stars and I really loved it. In this book, we're following Chad and Bailey. And Chad is our stereotypical college frat boy. He is vice president of his frat and he takes it very seriously. He loves his brotherhood. And they kind of have like a prank war going on with this rival frat. But then he meets this guy at one of their parties named Bailey. Chad just becomes enamored with him. He really likes him a lot. Come to find out, Bailey is a member of this rival frat. Chad didn't know because Bailey is new to school. He just transferred there. But once they kind of like figure out who each other is, they know that their brothers wouldn't be mad that they were gay, just that they were dating somebody in their rival frat. So they kind of like keep their relationship a secret. But basically, this book was so cute. I just loved it so much. It just made me really happy. Like I said, Chad was a stereotypical frat boy, but he's also like the opposite because he takes his frat very seriously, but he also just wants it to be like the best experience possible for everyone involved. Like he's very anti-hazing. He hosts therapy sessions with his brothers called bro motions. Like toxic masculinity. Who was not present in this book? I loved it. This is going to be some kind of series, so I'm so excited for the next book to come out. This one like just came out at the end of 2021, so I'm not sure when the next one will be out. It comes out March 23rd. Very exciting. Only have like 2 months less than to wait for that. Can't wait. Okay, then the next book I finished in January was Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. This one was not quite as much of a hit as Frat Wars. I gave this one 3.5 stars, but it was a pretty solid thriller. In this book, we're following Adam and Amelia Wright. Their marriage is kind of going downhill, so when they win a weekend getaway in this Scottish Highlands, I think, they decide to take it and go and see if they can spend some time together and fix their marriage. But unbeknownst to them, this is all a setup by someone who does not have their best interests at heart. When I picked this up, I thought it would be right up my alley. It's a snowy, isolated thriller, which I don't know why. There's just something about it, especially reading it in January. It was so much fun. And I do think that this thriller was a lot of fun. I was kept on the edge of my seat the entire time. I wanted to keep reading and find out what was going on. Also, I did not see the twist coming, which I never see the twist coming, so that's not really saying anything, but I was really shocked by it. I really liked it in the moment, but it's one of those twists where it doesn't make sense. Like it's more of just something for like shock value. It's not something you can look back and be like, oh, here was that clue and here was that clue and here was that clue, so it makes sense. This also definitely is I wouldn't say it's anti-feminist, but it's definitely not a feminist read, which I struggled with a little bit as well. So that's why this one ended up getting 3.5 stars. At a surface level, it's a really fun fast-paced, exciting thriller, but it does have those like underlying issues that I weren't sure were quite justified enough for me to give this book a higher rating. And then the third book I read in January is my favorite book of 2022. Yes, I'm already making that call. I made that call as soon as I finished this book, and it is not going to change. I guarantee it. And that is The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrane. This is an adult male-male romance. We are following our main characters, Dev and Charlie. Dev is very much a hopeless romantic. He really believes in love and wants it to happen to him, so much so that he actually works on this TV show that is like The Bachelor, but it is royalty themed. Dev is a contestant handler, so when the new bachelor, Charlie, comes on the scene, Dev is assigned to be his handler. Charlie is unlike any other bachelor that's been on the show because he doesn't actually really want to be there. He's there to try and repair his image, try and kind of help boost his professional life, which really upsets Dev because Dev believes everyone should be on the show because they genuinely want to find love, and Charlie is really not interested in finding love. But of course he does find love in Dev. Him and Dev fall in love. This was so good, and it was so much more than just the romance that I described. My favorite part about this book is the sexuality representation and the mental health representation. Charlie is on the asexual spectrum, and he's never really found anyone that he is attracted to until Dev. I just love Charlie so much. I don't even know how to explain it. His character just meant so much to me, and I just really appreciated who he was as a character. I just really felt seen by this book. Mental health rep was also great. Charlie has like OCD and panic disorders, and Dev struggles with depression. I really felt like the mental health issues in this book were handled very well. In my opinion, they just felt very realistic, and I also enjoyed how Dev and Charlie were there for each other and kind of figured out how to grow in themselves together. I just felt like this was a very healthy romance and relationship, and I just loved these characters so much. They meant so much to me. This is definitely my new favorite book. I won't shut up about it. If you haven't read it yet, you definitely need to read it. It is so freaking good. The next book I finished in January was The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle Jensen. I read this book for my Fantaseries book club that I host with Rachel, Nicole, and Christine. We actually read all these books on my channel, so if you're interested, you can check out the live shows. I will link them up above. This book was fun. It was one of the more successful Fantaseries reads for me. I ended up rating it 4 stars. So in this book, we're following Laura. Laura has been trained her entire life to be a spy. She's arranged to be married to King Arin of the Bridge Kingdom. Her whole entire life's purpose has been to enter into this arranged marriage, spy on this rival kingdom, and be their demise. But of course, things aren't as they seem, and Laura ends up falling for King Arin and discovering that really the kingdom she is from are the bad guys. And I really enjoyed this book when I was reading it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I really did like the romance between Arin and Laura, and I also really liked the world that was built in this book. This kingdom is really neat. It's like island kingdoms, lots of water, kind of pirate vibes almost in some ways. And while I really enjoyed it while I was reading it, I don't think it's going to be a super memorable book. It's definitely not a favorite. I thought it was a fun time, and I did really enjoy it, but even right now I'm like struggling to find things to talk about because I simply don't remember it that well. And then because I was still thinking about The Charm Offensive, I was like, what can fill this void that The Charm Offensive left in my life? I decided to pick up Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. I've had this on my bookshelf since it came out because I knew I would like it, but I don't know why I've never gotten around to reading it. And I very much regret this because this was a 5-star read for me as well. In this book, we're following Luke. Luke is the disgraced son of this rock star. Actually, he's like the estranged son of this rock star because he doesn't even know his dad very well. But he's like a tangential celebrity in the papers sometimes. He kind of has gained himself a bad reputation, and that is not good because he works for a charity and the charity is losing donors because Luke is not seen as a reputable guy. In order to clean up his image, he has to find a nice, normal fake boyfriend. Enter Oliver, who is a friend of a friend. Luke has always kind of liked Oliver, but he also doesn't like him because he thinks he's a like stuck-up jerk. But their mutual friend introduces them and kind of brokers this deal because Oliver also needs a fake date to his brother's, no, it's like his dad's retirement party. It's some kind of family function. So they make a deal to be each other's fake dates, and they spend a lot of time together getting to know each other so they can be convincing fake boyfriends, obviously, and they fall in love. I loved this book. It was so good. Oh my gosh. If you like banter in your romances, you definitely have to read this book because it was one of the funniest books I've ever read in my life. I laughed out loud so many times while I was reading this. Like, Luke and Oliver are just perfect together. They were so funny, and I just love this book. It made me so soft. There's not a lot of smut in it, but there's a lot of cuddling and sharing beds. So, you know, I really wasn't missing that. But yeah, this just made my heart warm. I read it. It's kind of a chunky book, especially for a romance, but I read it so quickly in like 24 hours. And this is honestly the book that single-handedly convinced me that I really love the fake dating trope, because it just worked so well in this book. It worked so well. I'm like wanting to reread it right now because I am just remembering how much I loved it. And I loved like the family aspects, and this got pretty emotional in some parts. And I just thought everything was handled really well and done really well. And it was so funny. And Alexis Hall is now like an auto-buy author for me. Their writing was so good. It was just so good. I loved it. And after that winter, I unfortunately read one of my least favorite books of the month, and that was The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. I gave this book 2 stars. It is a thriller, but it was not very thrilling. This is a Jane Eyre retelling, and if you know what that means, it means some crazy guy has a wife stuck in his attic. Which you could probably gather from the title anyway, but that's the premise. In it, we're literally following this woman named Jane, and she's new in town. She's kind of down on her luck. She walks dogs for all the rich people in this neighborhood, where she meets Eddie Rochester. Because we are not creative or clever at all. They just spark up like a mutual attraction. They start dating, they get engaged, blah, blah, blah. She kind of sees this relationship as a way to like wheedle in herself into money, but at the same time she also really likes him for some reason, which I don't understand, because she's a very like emotionless person. She just wants to like impress other people, pretty much. It's her sole motivation for this entire book, and that's all that happens. Well, obviously she finds his wife in the attic, but I just felt like the premise and everything in the plot for this book was very weak, and I found myself not caring about any of the characters. They're all very unlikable characters, which they're supposed to be unlikable, but they're not unlikable in a way that's fun. They're just frankly unlikable and uninteresting to read about. Most of this book literally is her scheming about how to make other people think that she's better than she really is, and it was just very boring, to be honest. And even like the storyline with how the wife ended up in the attic was not very interesting, and the ending was just, I don't know. It was just, this whole book was a letdown. I wasn't a huge fan, so that is why I got 2 stars, and is probably my least favorite read of the month. The next book I read didn't get much better, but it was a little bit better, and that is Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Manansala. I gave this book 3 stars. It was a very just middle-of-the-road okay read for me. In this book, we're following Lila. Lila has just had this horrible breakup, so she moves home to help with her family's restaurant, and while she's there, there's this ex-boyfriend of hers that has become a food critic in her hometown, and he is eating at her restaurant one day when he starts foaming at the mouth and dies. This obviously doesn't bode well for the restaurant. Lila herself ends up being accused of this man's murder, but Lila did not do this, and so she sets out on this quest to prove that it was not her and to figure out what actually happened. This is categorized as like a cozy mystery, I think, because I don't know what the qualifications are for a cozy mystery. I just know they're not my vibe. The stakes felt so low for this one. So I just was not very engaged in the mystery and what was going on. It also felt a little bit too unrealistic for me to suspend my disbelief. Like at one point she literally gets arrested and then walks out the next day and is just out on the street bebopping around trying to figure out what happened. It just didn't like totally work for me. I liked the vibes of the family and the food. I really liked like some of the side characters in this book. Like I really liked Lila's best friend. I don't remember her name. Just overall this book didn't work for me. I thought the plot was a little meh. And I think Lila herself was a little meh to me. There was a lot of like very cheesy lines. They were trying to make this weird love triangle thing, but I kept like mixing up the male love interest. I was like, I don't know anything about these men. I don't know why you like them. I don't know where they came from. I can't picture them. I don't know. This one didn't work that well for me. It was okay. There was nothing wrong with it per se. It just wasn't my cup of tea. The next book I read in January was If We Were Us by K.L. Walther. This is a YA contemporary romance, and I gave it 4 stars. I really liked this one for what it was. In this book, we're following our 2 main characters, Charlie and Sage. And Charlie and Sage have always been best friends, so much so that everyone around them thinks they secretly like each other. But Sage actually has a thing for Charlie's twin brother, Nick, and Charlie has a thing for the new guy in school, but no one knows that he is gay, not even Sage. So we've got a little love square thing going on. I really enjoyed this book. It takes place in this like elite New England boarding school, and these characters are all seniors in high school. I really liked the setting a lot. It's just a fun setting to read about, all these rich kids at this boarding school. Like, I don't know, it's just fun to read about. I also really liked both of our main characters. Sage was a little bit annoying. She was definitely like the sunshine trope. She's like a very hyper positive person, at least when she's around other people. She's almost like a little bit too bubbly sometimes, but I did like her a lot. I did think though that her like romance issues with Nick were very contrived. They didn't feel realistic. They just felt like the author was like, oh, we need some issues, some drama in this romance, so this is what we're gonna do. And it just didn't seem realistic or like it would actually happen. And it was honestly pretty frustrating. But I really did like Charlie's chapters. I liked him a lot as a character, and my heart broke for him in his struggle with his sexuality. There also was kind of a bit of the whole like idea that like you'll be happier if you come out, like just come out. Luke, who's the boy that Charlie likes, like actually like breaks up with him over it for him not being out. It's just done in a strange way because obviously Luke doesn't have to be in a secret relationship if he doesn't want to be in a secret relationship, but he does it in a way where he's like pushing Charlie to come out, which I don't think is right. Like I don't think you should push anyone to come out ever. It's done better in this book than I've seen it done before. Like it wasn't 100% problematic, but it was still kind of like a toe the line issue for me. But overall, it didn't ruin the enjoyment of this book. For the most part, this is a fluffy, happy contemporary, and it was a lot of fun. I really liked it. I liked the characters, so 4 stars. The next book that I read was Billy Summers by Stephen King. I think this is a book that I gave 3.75 stars on Storygraph, but I have it as 4 stars on my spreadsheet here in front of me. In this book, we follow this man named Billy Summers, and Billy Summers is a what's it called, a hitman, but he only kills bad people. He's getting older, he wants out. This is going to be his last job, but of course things aren't as simple as they appear, and once the hit is accomplished, Billy finds himself in some deeper waters than he could have assumed. This book is hard to describe because I don't want to spoil anything, because this is very much like something you should go into like not knowing a lot about, but I did really enjoy it. It kind of surprised me. Stephen King is very much like a hit or miss for me. I have read actually a lot of his books, not really like super enjoyed most of them. I don't know why I keep reading them, but I am in this case glad that I read this one because I really liked it. It was very thrilling, and there were parts of it that I was just like frantically turning the pages because I just wanted to know what was going to happen next. It definitely like kept me on the edge of my seat, which I loved. Like that's one of the best feelings when reading a thriller, is like not being able to read fast enough because you're just like so engrossed in what's going on. And I feel like that's not typical of Stephen King, because I have always said that he really needs to hire an editor who's not afraid of him, because his books are always overly long, and this one was too long. Like it could have definitely been shorter, but I did feel like the plot of this one was a lot tighter and cleaner than typical King, which I appreciated. Billy Summers himself was also a super interesting character. He was like one of those morally gray characters, obviously because he's a hitman, but you did really like come to like him as a person and root for him and what he was doing. And I'm all for a little bit of vigilante justice, as I have said many times before. All of those things that I've talked about already made this a 5-star book for me, but I absolutely could not justify giving this a 5-star because I had quite a few issues otherwise with the book. One was that there was a lot of fat shaming in this book, which was like unchecked, and it wasn't just like the characters doing it, like it was multiple characters doing it, and also in the narration a couple times. So it didn't feel like it was a character thing where you're supposed to like disagree with them and think they're shitty for saying that. It was like a overarching theme. And it was like a lot of the bad characters were fat, and like it was just really gross. I just thought it was strange. Like, why are you fat shaming in your book? Stop it. I also didn't love the relationship between Billy and Alice, who's one of the side characters that he meets along the way. I really thought the book would be a lot stronger if it had just been a like father-daughter-esque relationship. But of course, Stephen King, I don't like being in his head sometimes, because of course he had to turn it into like this sexual thing. And it was Alice that was in love with Billy, and like Billy was attracted to her, but he wasn't going there because he's a good guy. Like, shut the fuck up. It crossed over into icky territory, and I just didn't think we had to go there. Like, I just would have rather we had not gone there, you know? That's why I settled on a 3.75, because as like an overarching thing, this book was really good. I liked it a lot, but those 2 major issues I could not get past, so they both lose a little bit of the rating for me. The next book I finished was Icebreaker by A.L. Graziade. I don't know if I'm saying that right, I'm sorry. I actually got this as an ARC from NetGalley, and I'm really glad that I did because I love this book. It's really good. So this is a YA male hockey romance, which is awesome. I gave it 4 stars. I really did like it. So in this book, we're following Mikey, who is a freshman in college, part of this hockey legacy. Like his dad and his granddad both played for the NHL, so he is also expected to be an amazing hockey player, and he is an amazing hockey player. He is really good. He and Jason are competing for like the #1 spot in the rankings. So they are rivals, and Jason actually ends up going to the same university as Mikey, so they are on the same hockey team. And so now their rivalry is much more personal. It turns into something more, because this is a rivals to lovers hockey romance. And this book was really good. I really loved the relationship between Mikey and Jason, and this is like a true enemies to lovers. They literally throw fists at one point. They are punching the fuck out of each other, and it's great. But I really liked how their relationship built. I thought it was done really well. There was also this scene where like the team is sick of them fighting, and so they make them hold hands and say nice things to each other. Fuck me. It was so good. This book also dealt really heavily with mental health and honestly got pretty dark. Mikey doesn't deal with it in the best way at first, but by the end, there is positive representation for therapy and medication, which I appreciated. But I almost feel like the mental health rep drug the tone of the book down, made it really dark, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think it contrasted a little too much with the YA-ness of the romance. I almost feel like this book would have been better as new adult or adult and had more like explicit content in it. I don't know, I just felt like the YA parts of the book didn't match up with how dark the mental health rep was. Something just felt off about that. I don't know. I really liked this book. I thought it was really good. I definitely would recommend picking it up. Actually, I rated it 4.25 stars on Goodreads. So a little bit better than a 4-star. It was a really good read. I liked it a lot. But that book is what sparked my Kindle Unlimited spiral. I was like, I need some more enemies to lovers. I need some more sports romances, and I need them to be smutty. So we ended up on Kindle Unlimited, and I have still not left. First book I picked up was Savage Rivals by Becca Steele. This is another true enemies to lovers where they're literally beating the fuck out of each other. And it was amazing. In this book, we're following Asher and Levi. They are both captain of their soccer team at rival high schools, and they are like the bane of each other's existence. The rivalry between these schools is intense, especially between the soccer teams, so much so that they like pull pranks on each other and like destroy each other's property. The rivalry between these two is infamous even outside of like the rivalry between the teams. Everyone knows they fucking hate each other. They like want them to like fight in this ring. I don't know. There's like a fight club going on at these high schools. And like the tension between the two of them is so intense, and it's very clearly sexual tension. It's incredible. One night things just go too far. It's all uphill in my opinion from there. This book was really good. I binged it so quickly. I really loved the rivalry, and I loved how like true enemies to lovers this was, and just that sexual tension, man, cut it with a knife. It was intense. And then when they finally got together, like it was so soft, and there's like some hurt comfort in here, and I just had a great fucking time. It was amazing. This one got 4.5 stars from me. The next one I picked up was The Sweetest Hate by Balin Crow. This book follows Kellen and Arson. Arson is Kellen's best friend, Quinn's stepbrother. Quinn absolutely hates Arson, and so Kellen by extension also hates him, but then he meets him for the first time because Quinn takes all of his friends to his stepdad's lake house for the weekend, and Arson ends up there also with his friends. There's like a miscommunication with the schedule, so they're all there together, but then they end up hooking up. Even once they start hooking up, Kellen still hates Arson. Like, he just thinks he's a jerk. But then he starts to kind of see that maybe Arson is not the jerk. Maybe it's actually Quinn, his friend. His friend is fucking awful, honestly. This one I didn't love as much. I did enjoy it a lot when I was reading it, but looking back, it's not a favorite. It's not super memorable for me. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was okay. I really hated Quinn, though. His friend was just horrible to both Kellen and Arson. I hated him so much. I was like, okay, you can just die. Like, go away. The next one I read was Breaking Free by Isabel Lucero. This one I gave it 4 stars to. It was fun. Not as fun as some of the other ones I've read, though. And this one we're following Dominic and Trev, and Trev is at this Halloween party at this frat house when he hooks up with this random guy in the bathroom and is kind of content with the fact that he'll never see him again because he's not out. But then this guy, his name is Dominic, he ends up at Trev's school and is now on the football team with him, and Trev is like, oh shit. He doesn't really want it to become a thing, but Dominic is kind of intent on making it a thing. But then they're also competing for the same position on the football team, so a little bit of like rivalry starts going on there, but really they like each other a lot. So this one was cute. It wasn't super memorable, but it was fun. It was a fun read. I did really like Dominic a lot. I liked his character, and I liked their relationship. It was pretty cute. I don't have a lot to say about it. It was 4 stars. It was okay. But then I discovered the CU hockey series, and my life was changed for the better. The first book in the series is Power Plays in Straight A's, and the series was written by Saxon James and Eden Finley. This first book, looking back, is not my favorite, but I did give it 5 stars, and I stand by that 5-star rating because I fucking loved it. This is the male romance hockey series that I needed in my life. I read it so quickly. In this first book, we're following Foster and Zach. Foster is a senior in college. He's the captain of his hockey team. He has NHL dreams, and he really can't be distracted this year if he's going to make his future a reality. But then Seth, Foster's twin brother, asks Foster to keep an eye on Zach, who is Seth's best friend, who just transferred to the same college that Foster goes to. He puts up one condition, and that is that Foster does not hook up with Zach. But this proves a little bit harder than Foster anticipated of a promise to keep, and Zach kind of becomes a bit of a distraction to Foster. This book was really cute. Obviously, it has the best friend's brother trope to it. It's kind of like a nerd jock romance, which was cute. Also, Zach's like a very intelligent, school-focused kind of person, and Foster is obviously a hockey player. I really enjoyed their dynamic and their relationship and how it grew and developed. These books are very low angst. They're mostly just cute and fun, and I just really appreciated that. I flew through this. I loved it. Easy 5 stars for me. But then the next book, Face Offs and Cheap Shots, was so good. This definitely got 5 stars, like 6 if I could. It was so freaking good. In this book, we're following Jacobs and Beck, who we meet in the first book. They were juniors in the first book, and now it's next year, it's their senior year, and they are pitted by the coach against each other to become captain of the hockey team. And they don't do like co-captains or anything, so one of them has to win. They decide to put it up to a vote with the rest of the team because the rest of the team really likes both of them. They want to make these like ridiculous challenges, and they're like, whoever wins these challenges will win our votes to be captain. And so we've got a rivals to lovers action going on. Jacobs really hates Beck too, because Beck is like a spoiled rich boy, and Jacobs has had to work for everything his whole life, and he just thinks Beck is like an idiot and a jerk and just doesn't care about anything. And it frustrates Jacobs because he really thought that he had the captain position in the bag, and now he's gonna lose it to this idiot. Is basically how he feels. But they get to kind of understand each other and grow closer a little bit as they're put through these challenges. And then they get to the 4th challenge, which is a game of gay chicken. It leads to one of the hottest first kiss scenes I've ever read in my life. It was so good. Oh my god, it was so good. I want to reread it right now. It was so good. And then it kind of unlocks some feelings for both of them. Oh my god, it was so good. This book was so good. I don't often have the desire to reread books immediately after I finish them, but this one I definitely wanted to reread immediately after I finished it, and I want to reread it right now. It was so good. And then of course I jumped right into the 3rd book, which is Goal Lines and First Times, and this one was so good too. Oh my god. So in this book we're following Seth and Richie, and Seth is Foster's twin brother from the first book, and he gets his own romance here. Seth has had a lot of trouble connecting with people in past relationships, and he always finds himself getting broken up with, and he's kind of starting to do some reflection on why that might be, and he decides that maybe he's demisexual, maybe he needs more of an emotional connection with people before he finds them sexually attractive. So in order to kind of like explore this idea, he gets on this dating app. There he meets Richie, and Richie is on that dating app because somebody pointed out to him that making out with his best friend in high school, his male best friend in high school, might be a little bit gay, and that that's not something that most people do. So he joins the dating app to see if maybe he really is gay, potentially, to kind of explore his sexuality a little bit. And Richie is actually on the CU hockey team. He knows Foster and Jacobs and Beck, and by extension he knows Seth. He's met Seth a couple times, but they don't know that they're talking to each other. It's one of those tropes where they don't know who they're talking to. They're anonymous on this dating app, and they have like multiple run-ins like in person too, which is so fun. And they spend like the first half of the book just talking on this dating app and getting to know each other, and I really liked the build-up. I just love that trope where they're talking anonymously and they also meet in person a couple times and they don't know it. I don't know, I love it. Plus in the second book in this series, we know when they figure it out. Like we know the first time they're together, and I just was waiting this whole book for that scene to come. The anticipation was so good because I knew when they were going to figure out who they had been talking to this whole time. And I was right, and that scene was so good. I have a soft spot for this book. I know it's not a lot of people's favorites. It's a little bit more slow burn than the rest of them, but I just really appreciated the asexual representation in this book. Plus the anticipation of them figuring out who they were dating was so good. It was perfect. I loved it. And then I really didn't think this series could get any better, but then I read the 4th book, Line Mates and Study Dates, and it was so good. It was so good. Oh my gosh. So in this book, we're following Asher, who we meet in the 3rd book, and I think he was like a freshman or something, and now he's going into his sophomore year, possibly. But he's just a little shit. Like, he's a pain in the ass. Not everyone, Richie actually becomes friends with him in the third book, but he's just like the kind of person that pushes everyone away and is just angry all the time, and he's just a jerk. But he's a jerk for a reason, because he had to give up his NHL career and go to college and move back in with his brother because their parents died and they have to help raise their 5 siblings. So he's got a lot to be angry about. I'm just a sucker for that kind of a character. I'm sorry, I just am. We're also following Cole, and Cole is the son of the head coach of the hockey team, and he lost a bet to his dad, so he ends up as equipment manager for the hockey team that year. Him and Asher meet. Cole just like sees something in Asher that no one else does. Asher's brother, who is an assistant coach for the hockey team because he was in the NHL as well, he asks Cole to keep an eye on Asher and kind of help him out if he can because he doesn't have a lot of friends, blah blah blah. Cole at first is like, no, he's a jerk. But he starts to see a softer side and they strike up this friendship. Cole actually offers to tutor Asher as well, and he devises this this reward system for Asher in the form of sexual favors. But obviously they fall in love, and they're just the most perfect boyfriends. Just made me so soft. I loved them together. They just balanced each other perfectly, and I loved Asher. I love him so much. Asher's probably my favorite character in this series. I loved him a lot. And then everything was ruined when I read the 5th book in this series. So Puck Drills and Quick Thrills follows Asher's older brother, Wesley, and as I mentioned, he's assistant coach of the hockey team. He ends up meeting this professor on campus who notoriously hates jocks. He's actually Asher's current professor. Asher goes in to ask for some extra credit, and he turns him down like on principle, even though Asher has extenuating circumstances. So Wesley goes in to defend Asher and demand extra credit. Meets this professor. They kind of come to an understanding, and Wesley agrees to be his fake date to his high school reunion. This professor, his name is Jasper, hates jocks because he was brutally bullied when he was in high school by jocks, and so Wesley agrees to kind of go to show up everyone, prove Jasper is like a great person. They hook up and start to form a relationship. This book was just very boring to me. I really didn't like Wesley in the previous books. I didn't have any feelings for him. I didn't enjoy him, and then I really didn't enjoy his relationship with Jasper. Just thought it was kind of strange. It's an age gap thing. I mean, they're both like older. But they're still 10 years apart. I didn't like their dynamic together. It made me a little bit uncomfortable. I just don't like reading about older characters as much. Like, I would rather read about angsty 20-year-olds. I just don't want to read about these people that are 30 plus. I don't know. It might have worked for me if it was done differently, but I didn't like this one, and I only give it 2 stars, and it was so sad. I didn't think I was gonna like this one, and I kind of wish that I hadn't read it and had followed my gut, but I really wanted to get to the epilogue and see where all the rest of the characters were, and even that wasn't really worth it because by the end, a lot of the other characters had almost turned into caricatures of themselves, which I didn't love. I liked seeing Asher in this book, but I wish he had been in it more. I wish that it had just been about Asher, to be honest. I've been talking for more than an hour. I'm like dying here. Okay. We're still not done because the next book that I read in January was How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This is like a little novella that comes after the Folk of the Air trilogy that I read last year and really loved. And this is just like a bunch of kind of short stories that show little vignettes of Carden, particularly throughout his childhood and like before and after the events of Folk of the Air. This book was fine. Like, it was fun to be back in Fairy and to hang out with Jude and Carden again, but I didn't really get a lot out of it. I didn't think that this was revolutionary or even really necessary for me to read. I only gave it 3 stars, but I did read it because of Kayla's Buzzwordathon, and I needed to read a book that had where, what, why, when, or how in the title, and this has how in the title, obviously, so I'm glad I met it for that challenge, and it was like a quick, easy read, and it has fun pictures in it, which I appreciated, but nothing to write home about. And then the very last book that I finished in January was The Traitor Queen by Danielle Jensen. This is the second book in the Bridge Kingdom duology. In this book, we're following Laura after she has been kind of disgraced from the Bridge Kingdom for being a traitor, being the traitor queen. Arryn has been kidnapped by her father, so she sets out to try and get him back. She teams up with her sisters, Arryn's kingdom, even though they hate her, to get him back and then to win the war against her father. I gave this book 3 stars. I definitely didn't like it as much as the first one. I felt like it drug quite a bit. It just was very frustrating how angry everyone was at her. Like, I mean, I guess she did incite a war and have this whole kingdom held hostage, but she didn't mean to. And especially Arryn, like the whole time, he just really fucking hates her. I mean, he doesn't. You can tell that he still loves her, but he just is really nasty to her. He's like, I would forgive you, but my kingdom would not. It was just a little tiring. And then the end was just so convenient that it was kind of frustrating that we read all of that. We slogged through all of the negativity just for, I don't know. Like, I'm glad it had a happy ending, but at the same time, I'm like, the payoff, was it worth it? I'm not so sure. So this one just got 3 stars for me, but we are doing our live show probably the day after I post this video or the day of that I post this video. So check that out if you have read this and would like to chat with us. Those were the 20 books that I read in January. I'm so happy that I read so many good books this month. I really did have a great time with my reading, which was so fun. I just had a great month. I am ready for 2022 to be my year. That is all that I wanted to chat with you about today. Let me know down below what the best book you read in January was. Also follow me on Instagram if you'd like to see what I'm reading on the day today. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.